Assalamu alaikum. This is MS Mazhar from Nova CSS Academy, Islamabad. And the topic of today's discussion is the choice of optional subjects for the sake of CSS Competitive Examination. You know that a CSS candidate has to appear in 12 different papers, out of which 6 papers are for all the compulsory subjects and 6 papers are for all the optional subjects. And it is here that the students remain confused about the choice of optional subjects because of so many myths which always create confusions in the minds of the students who aspire to become the candidates for the upcoming examinations. Here in today's talk, I will try my level best to make all of your concepts totally clear. My talk would consider 4 basic criteria for the choice of your optional subjects. One of them is whether the subject has a promise of high score or not. A subject that can be easy to cover but does not have a good promise of high score would not be a good choice, would not be a recommendation at all. On the contrary, an other subject which can be comparatively difficult but doable, but it has a high promise of good score, would always be a better preference. Similarly, the second criterion would be the effectiveness of the subject. From effectiveness, I mean that the learning of a particular subject gives you help in handling and understanding certain other subjects and taking certain other papers. Just for example, I can discuss the case of computer studies or mathematics. Please don't mind if I say anything negative about mathematics, because my long experience tells me that there are some issues with mathematics. But here I'm just using an example. And the example is that you may be very smart in understanding the concepts of mathematics. You can be having a good promise of high score in mathematics, but studying mathematics or studying computer studies would not give you a great deal of help to write good essays or to give you an idea of very powerful answers in the paper of current affairs, in the paper of Pakistan affairs, certain other subjects as well. So we can understand that there are certain subjects which have a promise of being highly effective, meaning you study them and then you benefit from that learning in many other areas related to the CSS Competitive Examination. The third important criterion would be whether the subject is general or it is specific to a particular field of study, or it is specific to a particular educational background. For example, accountancy and auditing. If a person has never studied accountancy and auditing right after matriculation, he will not be in a position to cover this subject within 2 to 3 months, which is usually the time we can spend to prepare one particular subject. On the contrary, if we take up any one subject of history, you do not need any background education for any type of history. Call it history of the United States of America, or the European history, or the British history, or Islamic history and culture, and similarly the history of Indo-Pak. Any person without having any background knowledge of history can easily understand this subject, just like reading a novel. This applies to many more subjects as well. And lastly, the length of the subject. We understand that normally a student can spare 25 to 30 days to prepare one optional subject of 100 marks. So if there is a particular subject that would take 2 months or even more than 2 months, this can be considered a criterion to think of rejecting that particular subject and selecting some other subject in its place. So now, with this background, I give you further idea of many other aspects because of which we can make our choice of a particular subject and we make a decision of dropping an other particular subject. One more thing, that if you consider that the choice of a particular subject would be a criterion for your selection for a particular service or group, well, I can say it may be correct to a very little extent. However, the decisive factor for your allocation to a particular service or group will not be a particular optional subject. Rather, it would be your marks in the CSS examination, written part of the examination and the interview, and your position on the merit table. I'll give you a few examples to make this point further clear. Here is our student Zarmina Wazir, who appeared in the CSS examination 2016 with international relations, history of the United States of America, gender studies, international law, and sociology. But she was allocated after passing the CSS examination to Pakistan Administrative Service. Similarly, another student of ours, Mr. Momin Qureshi, was allocated to the Foreign Service of Pakistan the same year. His optional subjects were economics, public administration, gender studies, international law, and sociology. Was he allocated to the Foreign Service of Pakistan because of only international relation of 100 marks? Maybe. I can give you many more examples of my own students to make you understand that their allocation to different services or groups did not depend on the choice of their optional subjects. Rather, it depended on their position in the merit list and the marks they got in the CSS Competitive Examination. Some students want to know as to whether their allocation to a particular group or service will largely depend on the subject which they have studied in their degree program. My answer is that usually we could not find any meaningful relevance between the allocation of the candidates to specific groups or services and the subjects they have been studying in their degree program. Here, I will give you a few more examples of my own students for your further understanding, confidence, and satisfaction. This is my student Aisha Gul, who graduated in economics and passed the CSS examination to be allocated to the Police Service of Pakistan. She is Pakistan's first woman AIG now. Zainab Khalid did MSc in Zoology from Quaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad, and passed the CSS examination in 2020 to be allocated to the Police Service of Pakistan. Another student of mine, Sundas Ishaq, did her graduation in environmental science from ComSats. She appeared in the CSS examination of 2020, and after passing the CSS examination, she was also allocated to the Police Service of Pakistan. I can give you many more examples of my students to make you understand that your subjects of the final degree have little correlation with your allocation to a particular service or group. The new aspirants to the Central Superior Services of Pakistan usually ask this question, which is, whether I should select an optional subject in relation to the subject I have studied in my degree program. And my answer is yes, if the subject is otherwise quite promising to lead you to the victory stand. And my answer is no, if its track record is threatening and it has usually blocked the way of the students to reach the victory stand. Similarly, the students who aspire to become the members of the Center Superior Services also approach me with this question: how would I be able to prepare a subject if I have never studied the same subject in my entire academic career? My answer is that it all depends on what type of subject you are talking about. If you are talking about mathematics or physics or chemistry or accountancy, then definitely you cannot prepare these subjects without any previous educational background. But if you are talking about subjects like sociology or journalism or history, gender studies, criminology, etc., then definitely you do not need any previous educational background to comfortably understand and master these subjects. For example, let's take up the subject of sociology. In case of sociology, some of the major topics that you are supposed to prepare are rural society versus urban society, culture, values, customs, evolution of society, caste system, class system, feudal system, social problems like child labor, violence against women, drug addiction, and problems of the old people. What background knowledge do you need to write beautiful and impressive answers if questions have been asked, which are usually asked in case of the paper of this subject? Similarly, let's consider an other example of gender studies. And in case of gender studies, the topics that you are supposed to prepare are masculinity versus femininity, feminism, liberal feminism, radical feminism, globalization of gender, status of women in Pakistan, participation of women in politics, and then some case studies like that of Mukhtara Mai, Malala Yousafzai, and Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy. I think it becomes totally understandable that in order to give your answers, you do not need any background knowledge for mastering this type of subject. And the same applies to subjects of history, subjects like international relations, subjects like criminology, etc. Now is the time to do the maths, and I hope you will listen to me very carefully and understand all this thing very intelligently when I am putting all these figures and calculations before you. You know that in order to get a good promise of allocation to a desired service or group, a candidate needs to get around 60% marks in the written part of the examination. 60% marks are equal to 720 marks in the written part of the examination. Our experience tells us that usually on average the candidates get around 55% marks in the compulsory papers, and then in order to balance this deficit of marks they should get around 65% marks in the optional subjects. It means that they should very carefully select their optional subjects on the basis of high promise of giving them around 60 to 65% marks. I'm sure that if you keep all these points in your mind all through my next discussion, it would be quite easy for you to understand how to make a wise choice of your optional subjects. First of all, you must know that the Federal Public Service Commission has offered you 45 different optional subjects. And you also know that all these optional subjects have been divided into 7 different groups with certain specific conditions for each one of these groups and certain common conditions for all of these groups. For example, you have to select subjects worth 600 marks. For this purpose, it is not necessary that you select one subject from each one of these groups. It means, in other words, you can skip a specific group or at a time 2 groups, or it is also possible that you do not select any subject from 3 groups and still you combine subjects worth 600 marks. So, first point is that you can skip 1 or 2 or 3 groups at a time. Second point is that you cannot select 2 subjects from any group except group number 2. And when it comes to group number 2, then the conditions are different. If you have to select any subjects from group number 2, then either you have to select one subject of 200 marks or 2 subjects of 100 marks each. Means, from group number 2, a candidate cannot select subjects of more than 200 marks or subjects of less than 200 marks. With all these conditions in our mind, we can easily understand how we have to make a choice of our optional subjects. Now let us consider a situation for our further understanding. Suppose a candidate does not select any subject from group number 1 or group number 2. In that particular case, let's see what happens if then he selects one subject from each one of the remaining groups. Even then, he would be at a loss of subjects of 100 marks, because from the remaining 5 groups he would be able to select subjects of only 500 marks, but the target is that he has to select subjects of 600 marks. It means that now either he will have to select at least one subject from group number 1 or he will have to select subjects from group number 2. Let's consider what are the options if the candidate considers the subjects from group number 1. The possible options in that case would be accountancy, economics, computer studies, political science, and international relations. Each one of these subjects is worth 200 marks. And if the candidate does not select any subject from this group, then it becomes compulsory for him or her to select subjects from group number 2, and you already know that from group number 2 he or she cannot select only one subject of 100 marks. He will have to select either one subject of 200 marks or two subjects of 100 marks each. And in that case, the possible options would be physics worth 200 marks, chemistry worth 200 marks, applied mathematics worth 100 marks, pure mathematics worth 100 marks, statistics worth 100 marks, and geology worth 100 marks. There is also a third possible situation, which can be that the candidate selects one subject of 200 marks from group number 1, and he or she also selects one subject of 200 marks or two subjects of 100 marks each from group number 2. In this case, now he or she will have to select only two more subjects of 100 marks from the remaining 5 groups. There are only these 3 possible situations according to which you have to make your final choice of the subjects. Before we hastily decide our optional subjects, there are some eye opening facts and figures which I have gathered for you and which I have put before you in the form of a table. Let me first of all explain the contents of this table according to the columns and rows. The first table is about the optional subject of pure mathematics. On the very left side, the first column contains the number of different years in which the students appeared in the CSS examination. In the second column, we have gathered the number of those students who appeared in this particular subject of pure mathematics. The third column gives us the number of those candidates out of all the appeared candidates who were categorized by the Federal Public Service Commission as the familiar candidates. Maybe it was because of their last degree. And then the next column is very interesting. It tells us about the number of the students who passed this subject. And their number in 2006 was 1 plus 0. Let me explain what this 1 plus 0 stands for. In this case, 1 shows the number of those candidates who passed the subject of pure mathematics by getting marks between 33% and 59%. And 0 shows the number of those candidates who got 60% or above marks. It means in 2006, out of the 22 familiar candidates, only 1 candidate passed this subject by getting less than 60% marks, but no candidate out of these 22 familiar candidates was able to pass this paper by getting 60% or above marks. And why I am using the figure of 60%, I have already explained that in the optional subjects, you have to get around 60% or more marks to get through the CSS examination with flying colors. In the next column, the Federal Police Service Commission has told us about the number of those candidates which were categorized as non-familiar. And then in the next column, 0 plus 0 shows that out of these 19 non-familiar candidates, nobody got the passing marks and nobody got through this subject by getting 60% or above marks. So how many candidates in 2006 got 60% or above marks in pure mathematics? The last column tells us nobody. Similarly, in 2007, only 2 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks. In 2008, again, there was nobody who could score 60% or above marks. In 2009, only one candidate scored 60% or above marks. In 2010, out of 38 candidates, only two candidates were able to get 60% or above marks. In 2011, five candidates, and this can be considered a lucky year for the candidates who tried their luck through CSS examination with pure mathematics as one of their optional subjects. In 2012, out of 42 candidates, only one candidate could score 60% marks. Same in 2013. Then in 2014, out of 72 candidates, only five candidates were able to get passing marks, and nobody was able to get 60% or above marks. In 2015, horrible figures are before us. Out of 118 candidates who tried their luck with pure mathematics, only five candidates could get through the examination, and only one candidate could get 60% or above marks. 113 candidates simply failed in the paper of pure mathematics. Then in 2016, again, out of 118 candidates, only one candidate was able to get 60% or above marks. In 2017, nobody was able to get 60% or above marks. And last available figures are from the examination of 2018, in which out of 94 candidates who jumped into the examination hall having dreams about pure mathematics, but these dreams were shattered because only one candidate was able to get 60% or above marks. So, if you are still interested in selecting pure mathematics as one of your optional subjects, I have my moral responsibility to give you caution that this may not be a very wise choice. Now I will discuss the data about applied mathematics, because now you all have understood as to how this table is read. So I would quickly get to the important figures. In 2006, 49 students tried their luck with applied mathematics, out of which 20 were familiar, 29 non-familiar. Only 8 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks, which is not a bad figure, although it cannot be appreciated as a good figure as well. Then in 2007, 40 students appeared with applied mathematics, out of which 9 students were able to get 60% or above marks. This is also not a very bad figure. But in 2008, out of 63 students who took the paper of applied mathematics, only one student was able to secure 60% or above marks. In 2009, out of 68 candidates, 6 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks. Okay, cannot be considered a very bad figure compared to the figures which we have seen in case of pure mathematics. Then in 2010, which was a very lucky year for the students who tried their luck with applied mathematics, out of 62 candidates, there were 23 candidates able to get 60% or above marks, which is a very high figure. In 2011, again, out of 65 candidates, 15 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks. But in 2012, only 5 candidates out of 103. In 2013, 4 candidates out of 112. In 2014, only 6 candidates out of 160 were able to get 60% or above marks. Pathetic figures. Then in 2015, there was some relaxation. 10 candidates out of 125 were able to get 60% or above marks. Again, in 2016, 10 candidates out of 125 were able to get 60% or above marks. But then in 2017, only 7 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks in applied mathematics. And the last available data from the year of 2018 tells us that out of 118 candidates who tried their luck with applied mathematics, only 15 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks. So if we make a comparison of the figures between pure mathematics and applied mathematics, it can be easy to understand that the results of applied mathematics are somewhat better than the results of pure mathematics, but these figures are still not very encouraging. And because of all this data, I would like to give you a word of caution if you want to select applied mathematics as one of your optional subjects. And please always keep in your mind that from this group, I mean group number 2, you cannot select only one subject of 100 marks. So if you go for applied mathematics, you will have to combine it with one more subject of 100 marks. And then the possible situations can be that if you go for applied mathematics, instead of combining it with pure mathematics, think of combining it with statistics from the same group, which can be a better combination than all other possible combinations for engineers and mathematicians from this group. Similarly, I would also like to advise you that if you are still very much in love with applied mathematics and you do not want to sacrifice your knowledge in this particular area, then combine applied mathematics with geology. One more possible option is that you combine statistics with geology. But I think that you should not think of combining applied mathematics with pure mathematics. And for engineers, I would say that instead of combining applied mathematics with pure mathematics, or combining applied mathematics with geology, or combining applied mathematics with statistics, you can take a better gamble with physics, although it also has its own problems and issues. Let's now try to understand what the statistics, facts, and figures say about physics. You can see that in 2006, there were 159 candidates who appeared in the CSS examination with physics as their optional subject. 93 students were familiar, out of which only 9 students could score 60% or above marks. 66 students were non-familiar, out of whom nobody could score 60% or above marks. There were total 9 candidates who could score 60% or above marks in physics. In 2007, out of 109 students who appeared in the CSS examination with physics as their optional subject, only 9 candidates could get 60% or above marks. 2008 was a good year for the students who tried their luck with physics as one of their optional subjects, in which we saw that out of 131 candidates, 14 candidates, not a very big figure, but comparatively good figure, 14 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks. In 2009, only 17 candidates out of 168 candidates. This cannot be called a very good figure. In 2010, it was a brilliant year for the candidates who appeared in the CSS examination with physics as their optional subject. Out of 195 candidates, 68 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks. This is a 35% of the candidates with this subject. In 2011, only 9 candidates. In 2012, no candidate was able to get 60% or above marks. Then in 2013 and in 2014, it was a good result comparatively for the candidates who appeared in the CSS examination with physics. In 2013, 65 candidates. In 2014, 73 candidates were able to score 60% or above marks. But in 2015, 2016, 2017, the result was almost pathetic, because now you can see that the number of the candidates who appeared is increasing exponentially. For example, in 2016, there were 582 candidates, out of which only 14 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks. Similarly, in 2017, there were 583 candidates, out of which only 21 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks. However, in 2018, out of 531 candidates, some 42 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks, which can be considered a comparatively reasonable figure. So far as the other aspects of this optional subject are concerned, its scoring is usually less. Its syllabus is lengthier than other subjects. It would be time taking to revise it. And so far as its understanding is concerned, only a degree holder would be able to understand this subject. And lastly, it is less useful in other areas related to the CSS examination, because of which I feel that I should give you a caution against this subject. Anyhow, you can throw the caution to the wind. You are the master of your fate, and you can take all the decisions on the basis of your own understanding of all these issues. I am only putting whatever the stats I can find. Let's also talk about chemistry now. In 2006, only 12 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks out of 82, and I consider this figure comparatively a reasonable figure. In 2007, only 9 candidates out of 61 were able to get 60% or above marks. Okay, I can say that this figure is also understandable and reasonable if compared with the total number of candidates, only 61. In 2008, out of 91 candidates, only 12 candidates were able to get 60% of above marks. This is not a good figure. And then in 2009, out of 130 candidates, only 6 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks. 2010 was a good year for the students who appeared in the CS examination with chemistry as their optional subject. And in 2010, 46 candidates out of 162 were able to get 60% or above marks. In 2011, only 19 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks out of 135. In 2012, again, this is a very good figure of 51 candidates out of 140 candidates who got 60% or above marks. In 2013, only 20 candidates out of 180 were able to get 60% or above marks. This is also not a very good figure. In 2014, only 17 candidates out of 207 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks. In 2015, only 18 candidates out of 178 were able to get 60% or above marks. In 2016, only 4 candidates out of 290 candidates were able to get 60% or above marks. In 2017, only 22 candidates out of 261 candidates could get 60% or above marks. And in 2018, 41 candidates could score 60 or above marks out of 262 candidates, which in this case is a reasonable figure. So far as other aspects of this subject are concerned, it is usually less scoring. On the basis of this data, we can easily understand this thing. If you select this subject, you will be playing a big gamble. Its syllabus is comparatively lengthier than other subjects. It will take more time to cover. Its difficulty level would be high. Concepts would be intricate. It is definitely a degree specific subject. The people who have not been studying this subject in the last 4 years of their academic career would not be able to understand this subject even by spending 4 to 5 months. And lastly, it is less useful in other areas related to the CSS examination. Because of all these factors, I believe that I should give you a caution against this subject. However, if you are super confident about this subject, then nobody can stop you and nobody should stop you. You can go ahead. But my job is only to put all these statistics before you so that you can think very carefully and wisely and then make a choice after all the lot of thinking. Let's also consider what are the statistics about economics. In case of economics, we can quickly understand without making a year-by-year analysis that it is usually less scoring subject, because on our screen we can see that the data is more in red font color than in green font color, where green font color would represent that the score was reasonable or good. But the data in the red font color shows that the score was not good. So far as the other aspects of economics are concerned, it is usually less scoring as already specified. Its syllabus, however, is not very lengthy. Those who have already studied this subject in their master degree program can understand that its syllabus is reasonable and doable. So far as its relevance with the previous background knowledge is concerned, yes, definitely it is a degree specific subject. And those students who have not studied this subject in the last degree program would not be able to cover this subject in short span of time with comfort and ease. And lastly, it is less useful and helpful in other areas related to CSS competitive examination and other optional or compulsory subject. Because of all these reasons, I believe that still I feel myself compelled to give you a word of caution against this subject. But if you are super confident and you feel that even after considering all these aspects, you will be able to score high with economics as one of your optional subjects, then I'm nobody to stop you. My purpose is only to put all this data before you for your perusal and for your consideration, so that when you take a decision, you should make an informed decision. Let's also now talk about an other optional subject, which is computer science. In case of computer science, we can easily understand without making a year by year analysis that usually the students who were pre-familiar with this subject because they had studied the same subject in their previous 4 years degree were able to get good marks, but those students who were not very much familiar with the concepts of computer science and their knowledge was only superficial were not able to get as good marks as were received by those candidates who had studied the same subject thoroughly in their degree program. Because of this understanding, I would say that those who have in depth knowledge of computer science because of studying the same subject in their degree program can make a choice of this subject. But I would like to give a word of caution to those candidates whose knowledge about computer science is merely superficial. So far as other aspects of computer science are concerned, it is definitely comparatively less scoring. Its syllabus is lengthy as compared to other subjects. It is definitely a degree specific subject. Without studying this subject at university level, it would not be possible for you to get good marks in this subject. And lastly, it has less utility and usefulness for other subjects and other areas related to the CSS examination. Let us now talk about accountancy. Oh, very good score in 2006. 46% of the students were able to get 60% or above marks. 2007, 14.2% students were able to get 60% or above marks. Can also be considered a good figure. Even in 2008, there were around 16 students out of 166 who were able to get 60% or above marks. Then again, a good score in 2009. Very pathetic score in 2010. But in 2011 and 2012, again, very good figures. 33% candidates in 2011 and 31% candidates in 2012 were able to get 60% or above marks. Bad result in 2013, bad result in 2014, but an excellent result in 2015. Bad result in 2016, but a very good result in 2017. And again, bad result in 2018. But there is one more thing to notice, and that is that in this case of accountancy and auditing, those candidates who had studied this subject in their university career were able to get high score as compared to the score of those candidates who did not have in-depth knowledge of accountancy and auditing. Because of this understanding, I say that those students who are loaded with knowledge about accountancy and auditing, they might have studied this subject very thoroughly in their degree program, should take a chance of selecting accountancy and auditing. And I would say the same thing even for those students who want to take a bigger risk because they also feel they can do this subject, although they do not have in depth knowledge about this subject, but they have studied some part of accountancy and auditing. But they should make this decision of choosing accountancy and auditing after lot of deliberation and lot of thinking and considerations. So far as other aspects of this subject are concerned, it is good scoring subject, but its syllabus is lengthy. It is definitely a degree specific subject, and it is less useful to help the candidates in other areas related to the CSS examination or other optional subjects. Now, for our further understanding, we will also try to understand what is the situation and status of international relations. Although I feel that after some more learning about this enigma of optional subjects, the students would be able to understand that perhaps selecting either international relations or political science from group number one would be almost a compulsion for them. There would be no escape. Because of which, instead of discussing all these figures year by year, I would only say that one way or the other, you will have ultimately to decide in favor of this subject. And if not in favor of this subject, then alternatively in favor of political science from this group. And you will come to understand all this thing after some further discussion. So far as other aspects of this subject are concerned, it is not very bad scoring. Although it is not ideal in giving good score, but it is also not bad in giving good score. So far as its syllabus is concerned, it's reasonably lengthy. It's not very much lengthy. Third aspect is that most of its concepts, almost all of its concepts are quite general. You do not need any background knowledge or special degree to understand the concepts of IR. Just start this subject topic by topic, and you will be able to master every topic whenever you complete that topic. And last aspect is that it is very highly useful. It gives a great deal of help to cover other optional subjects and many other areas related to CSS examination, even current affairs and essay writing as well. For comparison, we will also discuss the status of political science. All the facts and figures are already before your eyes on this screen. As I have said earlier, I will say the same thing again, that after some more understanding, you will come to know that maybe we will be compelled to select one subject from group number one. And generally, that subject would either be international relations or political science. So it is needless to discuss the negatives of political science because one way or the other, we will be compelled to choose this subject. If not, international relations, or any other subject from group number 1. What are the other attributes of this subject? It is not very ideally good scoring, but it is also not bad scoring. Its syllabus is lengthy. Definitely, its syllabus is lengthy. And so far as its concepts are concerned, they are general concepts. You do not need any big degree to understand the concepts of political science. Start studying this subject topic by topic, and you will be able to understand every topic with ease. And lastly, it is also a very useful subject. So, my dear students, I told you that there are 45 different optional subjects which have been divided into 7 different groups. And all those 7 different groups we have already seen. Now try to understand this situation, because of which I said earlier that one way or the other we will be compelled to select one subject from group number 1, and if not from group number 1, then from group number 2. So let's try to understand this puzzle as well. Suppose we do not consider either of group 1 and group 2, then there would be only 5 remaining groups. Each one of them contains subjects of only 100 marks. It means that we can select only one subject from each group of 100 marks. Maybe one subject from group number 5 like this, one subject from group number 6 of 100 marks, one subject of 100 marks from group number 3, one subject of 100 marks from group number 4, and lastly, one subject of 100 marks from group number 7. Without skipping any group, if we keep on selecting one subject from each one of the remaining groups, even then we will be able to gather subjects of only 500 marks. But we are compelled to select subjects of 600 marks. It means that selecting one subject from group number 1, or if not from group number 1, then selecting subjects of 200 marks from group number 2 would be a compulsion. So we will have to make a choice between Scylla and Charybdis, or in other words, between the devil and the deep blue sea. And as the mythology goes, when Odysseus was passing from a dangerous part of the sea during a sea voyage, there was a very difficult situation. On one side, there was a monster called Scylla. On the other side, there was a very big, all engulfing whirlpool in the sea. In this situation, while passing from that point of the sea, Odysseus decided to face the challenge of Scylla. And till today, it is considered the better decision. So if you have to make a choice between Scylla and Charybdis, or between the devil and the deep blue sea, in your case, group number 1 and group number 2, I will call group number 1 as Scylla and group number 2 as Charybdis. Let's consider a few more things regarding the choice of optional subject. If you go through the syllabi provided by the Federal Public Service Commission for different optional subjects as well as compulsory subjects, then you will come to understand after going through the subjects and their syllabi very thoroughly and attentively, that among some of the optional subjects and compulsory subjects, there are several common topics. It means that in order to prepare such a topic, you have not to prepare it again and again while studying different subjects. You prepare one topic while studying and completing one subject, and while studying another subject, if there is the same topic, you do not need to give time to that topic again. For example, if you thoroughly go through the syllabus of international relations, then you will see that there are many topics which are common among the international relations, current affairs, the syllabus of Pakistan affairs, the syllabus provided by the Federal Service Commission for the history of the United States of America, and the syllabus of international law. And let me tell you one more thing, that a set of all these subjects also builds your knowledge to such an extent that you become very confident to produce inspiring and powerful essays in the paper of essay writing. Let me make a proof of whatever I have put before you. For example, if we consider the topics given in the syllabus of international relations and the syllabus of the history of United States of America, then you will come to understand these common topics, which are emergence of USSR and USA after World War II, then the Cold War, then America and UNO, next America and some world organizations, and you can find a specific list of those organizations. And then major elements of US foreign policy. Also, this topic of USA and international conflicts. And lastly, USA and nuclear technology. My study tells me I might have made some error, but I am still confident to put this finding before you, that there are around 33% topics of the syllabus of the history of United States of America which are also covered while studying the syllabus of international relations. Similarly, if we consider the syllabus of international relations and the syllabus of international law, we find these topics in common. Like international law itself is one chapter that you have to cover while studying the syllabus of international relations. Then nation state system. Then sovereignty of a state. Another topic is International Court of Justice. Then a topic related to wars. Then a topic related to terrorism. Again, there is a chapter that deals with international institutions, including United Nations, IMF, World Bank, World Trade Organization, etc. I found another topic common between the syllabi of international relations and international law, and that topic is diplomacy. My Comparison of the syllabi of these two subjects tells me that there are around 40% of the topics of international law which are also covered while studying the syllabus of international relations. Similarly, if we compare the syllabus of international relations with that of current affairs, then we find these common topics. They are Pakistan's external relations with many countries, then Pakistan and many regional and international organizations, and you find a specific list of those international institutions and organizations. And then international security, international political economy, terrorism, human rights, nuclear proliferation, nuclear security, nuclear politics in South Asia, with focus on Pakistan and India, globalization, Kashmir issue, Palestine issue, maybe one or two more topics. My comparison of the syllabi of international relations and that of current affairs tells me that there are around 60 to 70% topics of the current affairs which are automatically covered when you study the syllabus of international relations. And lastly, if you compare the syllabus of international relations with that of the syllabus of Pakistan affairs, then you find these common topics. Pakistan's external relations with many states, including India, Pakistan and many regional and international organizations, Kashmir issue, Palestine issue, wars in Afghanistan, Pakistan's role in the war on terror, challenges to national security of Pakistan, hydropolitics in regional context. This comparison of the syllabi of international relations and Pakistan affairs tells us that there are around 45% of the topics of Pakistan affairs which are automatically covered while studying the syllabus of international relations only. Let's now talk about another popular subject which is taken by around 28% of the candidates every year. In case of political science, if you compare its syllabus with the syllabi of some other subjects, you will come to understand that there are many topics in common in the syllabus of political science and that of Pakistan affairs, and from group 6, either constitutional law or philosophy, and also there are a few topics which are same between the syllabus of political science and the history of Pakistan and India. And this entire group also gives you a great deal of knowledge to write impressive, strong, and powerful essays in the paper of essay writing. In order to make this point further clear, I would like to give you an idea of the common topics between the syllabus of political science and that of constitutional law. If we compare these two syllabi, we find these common topics, which are political system and constitutions of USA, UK, France, Turkey, Pakistan, India, and China. And then other common topics are constitutional development in Pakistan from 1947 to 1973, which covers the Constitution of 1956, the Constitution of 1962, and ultimately the Constitution of 1973, along with certain amendments. And then martial laws, constitutional amendments, as I have already told you. Other common topics are democracy, presidential form of government, parliamentary form of government, judiciary, rule of law, human rights. My comparison of these two syllabi of political science and constitutional law tells me that there are around 35% of the topics of constitutional law which are also covered while studying the syllabus of political science. Let's also compare the syllabus of political science with the syllabus of philosophy. After comparison, you will come to understand that these topics are common between the syllabi of these two subjects. The topics are philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, Hobbes, Locke, Kant, Hegel, Karl Marx, Popper, John Rawls, Foucault, Derrida, Jean-Paul Sartre, René Descartes, and J.S. Mill, along with some other philosophers from the Muslim world, which are Al-Farabi, Al-Ghazali, Ibn Rushd, Ibn Khaldun, Shah Waliullah, Allama Muhammad Iqbal. On comparing the syllabi of these two subjects, I realized that there are around 60 to 70% common topics between the syllabi of these two subjects. Similarly, if we compare the syllabus of political science with the syllabus of Pakistan affairs, we will find these common topics: Pakistan's movement, Pakistan's foreign policy, national interest, constitutional development in Pakistan from 1947 to 1973, martial laws in Pakistan, constitutional amendments in the Constitution of Pakistan, then some organizations like SARC, ECO, SCO, and IMF, along with certain other topics like judiciary, rule of law, civil military relations, political development of Pakistan, ethnic issues, and national integration. On comparing the syllabi of these two subjects, I realized that there are around 35% common topics in the syllabi of these two subjects. And if we compare the syllabus of political science with that of the history of Pakistan and India, we find these common topics: role of Shah Waliullah, Sayyid Ahmad Khan, Allama Iqbal, and Qaid-e-Azam in Muslim nationalism leading to Pakistan's movement. Then Pakistan's foreign policy, constitutional development in Pakistan, evolution of democracy in Pakistan, civil military relations and politics of Pakistan. On comparing the syllabi of these two subjects, I found out that there are around 20% common topics between the syllabi of these two subjects. The syllabus of sociology contains some 15% topics or related areas from gender studies, some 10% topics or related areas from the subject of criminology, and some 18% of topics or related areas from the syllabus of Pakistan Affairs. And this entire group also gives you a great deal of help to write impressive, impactful, powerful essays. And now, just for our understanding, if you consider the syllabi of geography, environmental science, geology, and everyday science, then you would readily come to understand that subject of geography contains some 20% topics or related areas from environmental science, some 20% topics of geology and geography are same, and also the syllabus of geography contains some 15% topics or related areas from the syllabus prescribed by the Federal Public Service Commission for everyday science. However, this group, being the group of science subjects, does not provide you any great deal of help to write powerful and good essays. Having explained every important thing about the optional subjects for the CSS Competitive Examination, now is the time for me to make my recommendations for the candidates for the CSS examination about the choice of their optional subjects. If otherwise you are not going for a science subject or another technical subject like accountancy and auditing or town planning and urban management or statistics, then the first preference should be given to the subjects I have put in the first group shown in the green font color. These subjects include political science, international relations, history of USA, Indo-Pak history, Islamic history and culture, but not the other two histories, British history and the European history, because of reasons I do not find time to explain. But there are reasons because of which I have excluded the two histories of the group of history from this discussion. So the preference should be given to the remaining three histories. Similarly, other subjects which are highly recommended are sociology, anthropology, gender studies, international law, constitutional law, Islamic law and jurisprudence, philosophy, criminology, Urdu literature, and all the regional languages, that is Punjabi, Sindhi, Pashto, Balochi. And if you still need some more subjects to be added to your basket to complete the figure of 600 marks, then the second preference should be given to these subjects I have put in the next group. They include public administration, public policy and governance, environmental science, and journalism. Regarding environmental science, I would like to caution you that those candidates who are averse to basic scientific concepts should stay away from this subject. Regarding all the other subjects in this group, means public administration, public policy and governance, and journalism, I believe that even without any background knowledge, you can start these subjects to completely understand them within a short span of time. And then in the next group, I have placed subjects like accountancy and auditing, statistics, business administration, town planning and urban management, botany, zoology, agriculture and forestry, applied math, geography, law, and psychology. And about this category, I would recommend that only those candidates who have acquired certain specific reliable degrees in the same disciplines should think of selecting these subjects because they are fairly technical, and those students who have not been studying these subjects for the last 4 years of their academic pursuits and career should definitely stay away from this group or all these subjects mentioned in this group. And now the last category, I have shown these subjects in the red font color because I believe that even those candidates who have got degrees in the same disciplines should think 10 times before making a choice of these subjects, which include economics, computer science, physics, chemistry, pure math, English literature, Arabic, Persian, and geology. And I say again, if you have acquired special, reliable, strong degrees in the same disciplines and you are very much confident that you will be able to excel with these subjects, then I am nobody to stop you. Making it clear, now I can make the final recommendations. Okay, if you want to select accountancy from group number 1, then preferably combine it with business administration from group number 3, or alternatively public administration as well. But I would recommend the combination of business administration with accountancy. And then from group number 4, either select history of Pakistan and India, or Islamic history and culture, or history of USA. Then move on to group number 5, from which the most suitable subject would be gender studies. And then from group number 6, I would recommend that you select international law or criminology. And then move on to group number 7, and from group number 7, choose sociology or anthropology, or if you can comfortably cover and feel happy by learning any regional language that is specific to you, then you should preferably choose that regional language. Similarly, if you have to select international relations from group number 1, then I would advise you to select public administration from group number 3, and from group number 4, choose history of Pakistan and India, or Islamic history and culture, or very preferably history of United States of America, in case your major subject from group number 1 happens to be international relations. And then from group number 5, combine it with gender studies. And then from group number 6, preferably combine this group with international law or criminology. And then from group number 7, preferably combine sociology or anthropology or any regional language, if you otherwise are confident that you will be able to excel with a regional language. Similarly, if you want to select political science from group number 1, then again combine it with public administration from group number 3, and from group number 4, preferably select history of Pakistan and India, or Islamic history and culture, or history of USA. From group number 5, the most reasonable choice would be that of gender studies. From group number 6, preferably combine political science with either constitutional law or criminology or philosophy. And then from group number 7, select either sociology or anthropology or a regional language. And in case you want to select economics from group number 1, then combine it with business administration from group number 3 in preference. And other possible options can be history of Pakistan and India, or Islamic history and culture, or history of USA from group number 4, gender studies from group number 5, international law or criminology from group number 6, sociology or anthropology or a regional language from group number 7. And if you want to select physics from group number 2, then one option is that you combine it with international relations from group number 1. And if you are having an engineering background, then select town planning and urban management from group number 3. And preferably select environmental science from group number 5. And again, give preference to selecting geography from group number 7. However, other options open to you are history of Pakistan and India from group number 4, Islamic history, history of USA, gender studies from group number 5, international law from group number 6, criminology from group number 6, sociology or anthropology or a regional language from group number 7. And for those candidates who want to select chemistry from group number 2, I would again advise that think of combining it with international relations from group number 1. And then preferably select environmental science from group number 5. And also give preference to joining geography with this group. However, other options available and open to you are history of Pakistan and India, Islamic history and culture, or history of USA from group number 4, gender studies from group number 5, or in your case, most probably you might have studied botany and zoology in your graduation. So you can also think of joining any one of them with chemistry. Other options can be international law or criminology from group number 6, and sociology or anthropology or regional language from group number 7. Oh, look at my stubble. Was it really such a long video? Anyhow, I'm thankful to you for watching it. And if you need any further information regarding the CSS Competitive Examination, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and click the bell icon to get the latest videos. Thank you.